Hello. Uh,
Oh, hello.
we
Good evening.
uh, Good evening. We are here to have a very serious conversation, and a one that needs to be had over and over again about climate change and the real time effects of it. We're honored to have a conversation with the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Uh, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, we think, Josie
Yes,
Gonsalves,
Josie, not Jose.
Josie, my apology, Josie, I knew that, Josie
I
Gonsalves.
understand I
Uh,
have an Iberian last name, but I am an African, so
okay,
therefore not Jose.
yes, no,
I'm
no,
just teasing you, Jonathan. Thank you so
my
much.
fault, my fault. No,
Yeah, no,
thank you, no,
yeah,
very much appreciated.
yeah.
Um, and also, thank you for organizing this as well, right? Like the your the public square amplified uh, is just really good, doing good work in media and doing the necessary work to get alternate voices out. Um, the recent hurricane we know has been devastating. 90% of the homes, right, like have been devastated.
Sure, sure.
And this
Yeah,
is a trend every year. There's a different Caribbean country that is hit with hurricanes that are devastating to the population, and we believe that the science says that it's going to happen more. Right.
yeah,
Um,
that's true. Yeah.
so we are honored to have the Prime Minister in today for this conversation.
And
Talk to us about some of the things that led up to this conversation.
sure. First, let me say that I'm because we're in the midst of a crisis. Because I'm Vincentian, but I'm not on the island. The PM is probably being pulled in multiple ways. He will be on. I spoke with him at 6 o'clock and 6:15, and he will be on. But we know that they are experiencing and living in a crisis and an emergency response, and they're steeped in disaster relief. Uh, so I'm sure that he'll be on shortly. So, St. Vincent and well, let me begin with we're at the top of the hurricane season, right? Where the Caribbean sits in the Atlantic belt. It is shocking to start a hurricane season with a Category 5 hurricane. It's indicative that it is no longer when, but it is now that we must address. So it's not if not now when, but it is rather now. And it's rather urgent that we address the climate crisis um, and its impact on not just the most vulnerable, right? But it's also those who live in developing states, and more importantly, those who are citizens and residents of small island developing states. And that sort of compiles I think, about 65 million citizens in the world. They're less than a percent, but they are on the front lines of the climate crisis. So when we think about St. Vincent, we think about an island 11 by 18 miles. We think about oceans rising and warming, and we think about fishermen and families who make their living and eat from fishing, and so fisheries are impacted. When we think of the majority of the population living on agro land, relying on the land to sustain them, when we think of that, and then we look at what's happened over this past hurricane this week, over according to the permanent secretary of agriculture, good 80% of crops have been destroyed. Fruit trees uprooted. The wind was so strong that it's knocked everything off. So people are without food, without water. So things are dire on the island. The mainland didn't incur as much damage as a few of the Grenadines. So St. Vincent and Grenada hold an archipelago of islands called the Grenadines. And several of the Grenadine Islands have been decimated. 90 to 95% of homes and buildings just flattened. Many people work on those Grenadine Islands. Some live there permanently, but some work there. And so we have workers and residents who are now finding larger islands to find shelter and to claim home. So, and it's just, it's just been several days since Beryl sort of passed through the islands. So that's pretty much the stage bit.
Right, and so I'm sure that he is busy with so much coordination that needs to go on right now. Do you know what some of the international organizations are that are helping, and is the United States involved in terms of with aid and help? And do they need more? Is this a case where that the aid is flowing in, or do people not know about what's going on in very real ways in various parts of the world?
The PM is coming in now, and he'll be able to answer. But certainly their friends, international friends of St. Vincent, and the PM is in a much better position than I am to sort of speak to that directly. But certainly the UN. And certainly is responding. Other islands are responding, and I'll let the PM speak more on that.
Well, welcome.
Yes.
Prime Minister Gonsalves, are you there?
Yes. Good.
Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Who do we have in addition to Josie?
Hello,
Jonathan
sir.
Alston. I am Jonathan Alston. I'm the co-producer of All Politics Are Local.
Good to meet you, Jonathan. And who else?
And right now it's just myself and Josie.
Okay.
We're hoping a couple of other journalists will join us. But PM, thank you so much for taking this time out. I know you're probably not sleeping, and there's so much going on. So thank you so much for making this time. We're hoping to give you as much time as possible to share sort of updates on what's happening on the island, but also to sort of raise the urgency of why disaster risk management must happen right now, and why developing countries must do their part. I know that, but so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Now,
right.
Go ahead, my brother Jonathan.
I was going to ask the first question, which really is, what is the situation right now? And what is the situation right now? We've heard 90% of the houses have been devastated and destroyed. Where are we at with a lot of the life-saving aid that needs to go through?
Well, let me begin first by thanking you, and then for your viewers, listeners, for them to understand the geography of our country, so they could appreciate what has been happening. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is an archipelagic state of 32 islands, 9 of which are inhabited. Union Island, which is the most badly affected, in fact, completely devastated, is in the southern chain of our islands, and that is 40 miles away from Kingstown, the capital of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is located on the main island, St. Vincent. There are 5 islands in the south of the chain which have been devastated. Union Island completely. The resort islands nearby of Palm Island and Petit St. Vincent, devastated completely. Then there is Myro, which has 95% of the houses severely damaged or destroyed. In Canawan, a similar picture as in Myro. In that southern chain, in these 5 islands, or even if you take out the 2 resort islands, the other 3, Union Island, Myro, and Canawan, you have in excess of 5,000 persons living. The estimated number is 5,500. Now, you put on an average to each house 3 persons. You can see already where you are at approximately 1,800 houses. Then you come up the chain to the largest of the Grenadine Islands, which is 9 miles from St. Vincent, Bequia. The evidence provided by the local committee, it varies between, depending on what you're counting, between 20 and 40% of the houses, which have been damaged or destroyed. On St. Vincent, there are hundreds of houses which have been destroyed. We do not have a number yet for the simple reason that we lack communication. The telecommunication system across the country is entirely broken down. At the residence of the Prime Minister, I don't have internet. Because the system is gone and they're trying to build it back. Let me go back to Union Island and come up to talk about the public and other facilities other than those which are in the private sector in terms of the houses. On Union Island, the hospital has lost its roof, and part of the structural integrity of the building has been compromised. So there's no hospital.
Wow.
The airport the terminal building is gone. That includes the tower and everything for the civil aviation purposes. The 2 primary schools and the secondary schools, their roofs are off, they're severely damaged. In fact, 2 of the schools are really destroyed completely. The bulk of the solar panels at the state-owned electricity company, they're shattered. And the electricity company, the electricity facility, the power plant, maintains substantial damage. All the poles, the electric poles, are down. It's going to take months to get back electricity on Union Island. Other public facilities, they have been severely damaged or destroyed. In Myro, the power plant has been compromised, but the existing infrastructure, it's possible that we can get back electricity there maybe in a few weeks' time. Similar thing in Canawan. Canawan has has two big developers. One in the south, in which there's a joint venture there with the government. There's a top-of-the-line marina that has been very, very badly affected. Millions of dollars worth of damage, and a couple of boats in the marina. Well, 3 of the boats in the marina went under. The airport terminal building in Kanawan, which is a jet airport, that's gone. The tower has gone. The tower for the civil aviation, the fire station, the roof has been damaged. The fire truck itself also has been damaged, the main fire truck. The police station has had part of its roof ripped off, and the building is compromised. The primary and secondary schools in Kanawan have had their roofs taken off and other parts of the buildings compromised. But in Kanawan, because of the developers in the north and the south working with the police and local community persons, there is a semblance of a structure to hold things together, which you don't quite have, which you don't have at all in Union Island. We are setting that back up. In Bequia, the electricity is already gone, but it's coming back bit by bit. On mainland St. Vincent, as of last night, 70% of the suppliers of the customers got back electricity, but there are large areas still without. The water system on the mainland, from the day after the day of the hurricane, the system in large areas is broken down. Pipes broken, intake areas damaged, and so on and so forth. And our staff have been working feverishly to get that back. And there is one major area in North Leeward, a whole community, from the feeder for that area, the northern side of the island and the western side. They should have completed the repairs today. I'm still at the office. I haven't gotten a report yet from the Chief Executive Officer of the Central Water and Sewage Authority. But if that's not completed today, it will be completed tomorrow. But in the areas where we didn't have water, we were transporting water. And no, to leave St. Vincent to get to Union Island, which is 40 miles, there's a fast ferry which takes an hour and a half to get to Union. So that if you have to get to Union Island, it takes you an hour and a half by boat. We had hitherto regular plane services with 19-seater twin otters. But because of the condition of the civil aviation system with the airport's terminal building gone and the tower, only emergency landings are permitted there. I myself went on such an emergency landing to Union Island and also to Kanawan. On St. Vincent, the Kingston port, Josie, is inoperable. It's an old container port, but it was working. The car boats used to come there and so on and so forth. Other containers would be left off. The famous geese boats which transported bananas come from England. That's where they dock. They can't dock there anymore because you can't use that pier. The other container port, slightly west of Kingston, north of Kingston on the western side. That has been damaged significantly, but still operable. So what we have had to do is to use in Kingstown the cruise ship ferry berth to bring vessels. But you have to be careful because the actual building itself, the actual terminal itself, is made for passengers and not for cargo. So you can't have cranes or anything go there. You can't unload any container there, obviously. And whatever you unload, you have to unload in batches in order to be able not to compromise the cruise ship pier also. What are some of the immediate problems? Well, we have been taking food and water down to the Grenadine Islands. And what the government has done, we hire the fast ferry, which is privately owned, to provide transport free. It leaves Kingstown at 9 in the morning, and it leaves Union Island at 4 in the afternoon, every day, Monday to Friday. But on 3 of those days, it would stop into Kanawha, and on 2 of those days, it would stop into Mairo. And we have 2 other vessels which take people, but also take cargo, equipment, supplies, because the fast ferry is a passenger ferry. You can take a few things aboard it, personal things. So, and what the reason for this fast ferry, we can move people out, we can evacuate people, and people can go and come. We have moved out, I would estimate, since Thursday, I think we have moved over 500 persons out of Union Island. The number may well be more, of the 3,000.
So, so Prime Minister, how many? So that's 500. How many people are sort of? I can't imagine that you could build makeshift shelters for folks on those islands that have been devastated. How many ferries do you have, and do you need more ferries? And how many people are still left? I mean, is everyone coming to the mainland, or are they going?
No. The bulk of these people still remain. What the ferry service does, and the other boats, is to make the connectivity. So there are some people will come up. Some of them will go and stay with friends or family. But we have designated thus far 2, but we'll probably have to increase those, of the shelters. We have 70 shelters with about just over 2,000 persons in those shelters, and a number larger than that were in private homes of friends. We want to put the people from Union Island and Kanawha and Mairo. We wanted to put them, as we did for a number of people during the volcanic eruptions in April 2001, in guest houses and the like. But the guest houses are all filled with people who have come for Carnival. This weekend is the big Carnival weekend. We are having the Carnival still, but it's truncated. It's so people will still have fun, but it is fun in a more contained environment.
But
it seems like you have a situation where there's all hands on deck, right? Like you have a potential emerging humanitarian crisis with housing and people without shelter. Does St. Vincent's and the Grenadines have enough internal resources
No,
to
absolutely
deal
not.
with this.
Absolutely not. Let me just, before I come to resources, and we could come to that, let me just explain to your viewers the magnitude of the problem, even to begin with cleaning up.
Yeah.
So you have close to 1,000 houses in Union Island. Let's just use Union Island for the moment,
Yeah.
because you have about 3,000 people. Almost every single roof is off. And though as there has not been an assessment in detail of each of the houses, it would appear that more than 3/4 of the actual structures are compromised, and they're concrete structures. And there's some big and beautiful houses on Union Island. Some of them built by migrants, people who migrated to the United States and come back home, people who fish for conch and lobster and so on, and have built good houses. Think about moving 1,000 roofs of significant houses and moving 750 wall structures, because you have to demolish them.
Oh,
Now, that I'm not dealing yet with the public buildings.
No.
These islands are environmentally fragile. So the first problem you face, Josie, where are you going to put all of this rubble? One solution is to barge it, but barge it to take it where and to do what
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
right.
And then you will have to, if you barge in to take it, to throw them somewhere, you have to disaggregate the galvanized zinc roofs and the steel from from the concrete. Now, let's take you a step further. In the school term has just ended for the primary and secondary schools. In Union Island, there are 2 primary schools and 1 secondary school. In Canawan, there's a secondary school and a primary school. The students from Myro go to Union Island for the secondary school, and they have a primary school in Myro. Now, electricity is not going to be back by September in
Correct.
Union Island, unlikely to be back. The houses would not yet be all built back by September. What do you do with the students? I have to bring the students up here to St. Vincent. But there wouldn't be enough spaces in the schools to place all of these students in existing schools. So we will have to build temporary secondary schools and temporary primary schools.
And temporary housing for them.
Right.
Families.
Well, not just that. Are you going to send your son and daughter?
From their home.
Somebody in the family would want to come. Maybe everybody in the family may want to come. So they have to be provided for. Now, then let's go to the productive sector. Farming is very important to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a significant part of our GDP and a significant employer of labor. All the banana trees are down, the plantain trees are down, the fruit trees, the mangoes, the avocados, coconut trees in many of the areas, trees from forests, and of course greenhouses with vegetables. No, the mango season would have been starting very shortly, because I'm starting to get nice Julie mangoes, Julie mangoes, and they're you drive around the country, you see a lot of green mangoes under the trees because they're all blown down. We have to give production supports to the farmers. Trees take a long time to grow back to maturity. The bananas will take 9 months.
They will, yes.
The plantains a little longer. But I have to support the farmers in that period. I have to give them production support, and I also have to give them income support. So I'm sketching for you the magnitude of this issue. And bearing in mind, we are in the first week in July. The hurricane season begins on June the 1st.
Yes.
It is the first time in the history of hurricanes, out in the Atlantic hurricane season, that you have had a Category 5 hurricane this early.
Right.
In fact, when I was a boy in primary school, they taught me this ditty. And those persons would want to know when I was in primary school was in the early 50s, because I was born in 1946, just after the Second World War. The ditty went, June too soon, July stand by. August come it must. September remember. October it's all over. Well, June is not too soon. And as you have just seen, you don't stand by in July, you get a Category 5 hurricane.
Right.
And it's not over in October, because in December, on Christmas Eve 2013, we had a storm which killed 9 people and caused loss and damage to over 1/3 of our GDP, of our gross domestic product. No. This is something of a much larger scale, though thankfully we have had, before coming out of the Grenadines, three deaths, and yesterday morning the Commissioner of Police told me, this morning, Commissioner, 3 body bags came up from Union Island with 3 partially decomposed bodies. These were bodies which were in rubble, which people have just discovered. There may well be more.
Prime Minister, I think the audience should know that this is not your first disaster that you're managing, right? You've managed a number of serious disasters.
I have.
And I think you've become sort of an expert in disaster management. And I think you are poised to sort of make it's time for sort of a radical policy vis-a-vis developing countries on loss mitigation, right? The fund that the developing countries said that they were going to invest in, they have not even hit 10% of that investment. You're still repairing from a volcano, you're still repairing from a flood, and you may have another Category 5 behind you, behind Beryl.
Well, what happened is this. On Tuesday, on Wednesday, a tropical wave came. Fortunately, it didn't develop into a full system. But what happened, interestingly, Hurricane Beryl was a relatively dry hurricane. By that I mean we didn't get the anticipated 4 to 6 inches of rain which you would associate with a Category 5.
Wow.
We got just under 2 inches of rain for the period when it came. Whereas the tropical wave brought 3 inches of rain. Then we had landslides.
Wow.
And what had happened, the volcanic eruption had the volcanic eruptions had deposited in the forest large amount of material, including trees, which are yet to come down, yet to be fully cleared. So rainfall, the ideal thing is if you get rainfall, they come down in bits and pieces. But if you have heavy rainfall in a short period of time, you can have essentially lahars. So it's a complicated business. A simple thing which let's take St. Vincent and the Grenadines, according to the United Nations Development Program, has a high level on the Human Development Index. So, across the country, you have statistically 100% electricity in the homes, and you have similarly a percentage with water. But let's take now electricity. People have fridges, they have deep freeze. So the hurricane struck on Monday, your electricity goes. You have meats in the fridge and other things.
Right.
They start to go bad. You can't go. You can't go to collect garbage on Tuesday. The Central Water and Sewage Authority can't do that because the roads are blocked. You can't go. You can't go. Wait. You can't go on Wednesday because tropical wave is preventing you from going on the road on Wednesday. In the meanwhile, all of these meats are smelling, and the trucks to collect the garbage couldn't go out on the days as I've just indicated. So you have potentially a public health problem, which meant that this morning the Central Water and Sewage Authority had to double up with their trucks and to work to do more shifts in order just to clear the backlog of solid waste. Persons who have not experienced these kinds of disasters do not have a picture of what you're confronted with on a day-by-day basis and hour-by-hour basis when you have this kind of a terrible storm, terrible hurricane. We will come back to the money which you ask, and I can ask about that.
But also the resources. Are there countries with actual resources in place? Like, are there ships? Are there countries coming to help transport goods and services and people? And what is it that you need?
Okay. Well, let me begin by saying what I don't need. I don't need persons who are motivated by Christian conscience or by a great interest of solidarity to say, I am going to send a multiplicity of packages of food and clothing and the like. You do that, and a lot of people will go into their cupboard and take out things which are past their sell-by date and so on and so forth, and go into their cupboard and take clothing which they didn't use for the last 3 years. No, you do that, you're just creating work for me because you're going to block up the ports. So you're going to let me use manpower, which I have to use for other purposes. So if you send in things, you have to send in food. You have to send the food through structured systems. Or if you want to send it individually to to your aunt or your uncle or your nephew. Send it directly and personally to them, because I have just removed all the duties on these barrels which come in. So you can send them, and between now and the 31st of December. So you send it to your nephew. Your nephew has the responsibility to go to the port, clear it. It has to come through a particular transport system, and so on and so on. That's fine. And otherwise, we need monetary donations, and we need tents, we need tarpaulin, we need cots, we need we need the chainsaws. We need things to clean up. We need portable toilets. In fact, I've been trying to source. We had some, but not enough. We have to try and. I've been trying to source portable toilets. Out of the US or the Caribbean, and I have someone working on them. These are real life issues. Now, all of this, what I'm talking about, costs a lot of money. There are three. There's a stage of cleaning up and relief. They're done simultaneously. And then there's recovery and reconstruction. The bill is going to be huge. You ask the question, where the money coming from? I want to just say this to you. In 2020, COVID hit us, which went into 2021. That didn't originate with us. We didn't create it in a lab or wherever it came from. It came upon us like a thief in the night. Devastated our economy. When the volcanic eruptions occurred in 2020, April 2021, we still had COVID. We had to manage the volcanic eruptions with people in shelters at the time of COVID. Just think of that. Hundreds of persons in a shelter. But you have COVID.
Right.
Then in July of 2021, Hurricane Elsa came. That was a Category 1 hurricane, over 75 miles per hour. It fortuitously, in some respects, it hit the northern area of the island of St. Vincent, which had been devastated by the volcano. So it only added to the devastation. People had already moved out and they were in shelters. We moved 20,000 persons, 1/5 of the persons on this island. And then we began a period of tremendous recovery in 2022, 23, 24. The economy has been growing. Lots of investments, lots of big capital projects. Because when we were in the hole, we were planning to come out of it very swiftly. Not only state investments with resources borrowed from overseas, the World Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, other state agencies, Republic of China, Morocco, they're different places. European Union. The private investment, tremendous hotel expansions, the Sandal Resorts, which is a 250 million US dollar resort, 302 rooms, the arguably the best sandals anywhere in the Caribbean. We are working on a modern port, 250 million US dollars. That's scheduled to complete by June next year. And the economy is moving. And lots of exciting things are happening. And then Hurricane Beryl. And we make no contribution of any, what you can talk about, to global warming.
Right.
We are not part of the epoch of the Anthropocene, man-made climate change. But we are on the front lines. Where are the resources coming from? Right now to clean up. There are CARICOM countries who have limited resources, but they have been helping, advocating and sending food, water, some cots and supplies, what I'm talking about. And some have sent monies for relief. We have we have the case of the United States of America has sent for relief 100,000 US dollars, not to the government, but to the Red Cross.
Okay.
To help. But these sums, all of them together,
Right.
as grateful as we are, is a drop in the bucket. What we had done, we had set up a contingency fund, and we had increased our value-added tax by 1 percentage point. And by law, that 1 percentage point goes into a contingency fund. My government did that, so we drew from it for COVID. We drew from it for the volcanic eruptions. We drew from it for Hurricane Elsa. And we are drawing from it now. Now, but what we have there is wholly insufficient for the purposes at hand. But we have something to start with. And we're going to go to Parliament. We are going to increase our overdraft so that we can spend some money. We are going to have to borrow more money. The problem is this. We are not going to borrow money on commercial terms. We're going to borrow on concessional terms from the Caribbean Development Bank, from the World Bank. But these monies, the bulk of it is very slow in coming. A lot of bureaucratic delays. A consultant to do this, another one to do that, and so on and so forth. Those monies are not really so much coming for relief. You might have them going on for development purposes, reconstruction purposes, but none of that money they're going to lend you any of that for housing. And if you get that for housing, I'm sorry for you, because it's going to be such a long, there are going to be so many hurdles that you'll probably build 25 houses in a year.
Right.
So those monies you have to now try to seek elsewhere through other governments. Which have a particular relationship with you and who may have the resources in these circumstances. But as sure as the sun rises, our debt will increase because of this.
Right.
And will increase significantly. We have to repurpose monies things which we plan to do there for development, we have to not go there, to put the money here. But the extent to which you can repurpose is, the numbers are fairly limited. Of course, we have the option from the World Bank that monies which we have borrowed, we can utilize, say, 10% of the unused balances for these purposes. But that, again, is not a significant amount of money. So you have to be creatively doing these things. And normally, if you have a pretty much a garden variety disaster, but not one like this. This is a horse of a different color.
But PM, I think I know that that you're in a particular situation, but we do have COP. We have COP coming up. We have the General Assembly coming up. We have we have not just Pacific Islanders and those of the Sahel. The overall small island development states are in crisis, right? So when you make the statement that St. is not responsible, SIDs are not responsible for the warming of the oceans. Our food supplies are being destroyed. Mm-hmm. The oceans are being destroyed. Our agricultural sectors are being devastated. We have masses and masses of people who live off the land. We're not industrialized states. We're not high-tech states. Our economies are not those of developing countries. And so prime ministers like you, who are on the front lines of this sort of exponentially increasing disaster from the climate impact of post-industrialization and soon to be tech capitalism, how are you going forward? Because you can't, it's about sustainability. You don't have the money to sustain. You're making decisions about, what Daddy would say, right? Pay Peter to, what is it, Peter Paul?
Pay Peter to pay Paul. Rob
right.
Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, rob Peter. So, I mean, and it's not unique to you. But I think you've had far more disasters to grapple with, like specific Pacific Islanders. Like, how are you going to sort of address? I mean, this takes money, and it takes infusion of capital immediately, and it's not about loans, but that's a challenge. And I don't begrudge you that challenge, and it's a hard place to be.
Well, Josie, I just told you that the international financial institutions, mm-hmm. they are not fit for purpose for these kinds of disasters.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that point.
No, absolutely, they're not. Yeah.
We can get some resources from the rapid facility of the IMF, but relatively speaking, it's small monies. Mm-hmm. Because in the way it's structured, the IMF, is money is related to essentially what your SDRs are, your special drawing rights, mm-hmm. the extent of it within the IMF. So you're constrained. You mentioned COP. No, we have to keep on with COP and keep with the advocacy. We have gone past the 28th edition.
Yeah.
You remember Copenhagen? $100 billion.
Yes.
Per year.
Yes.
For developing countries. Mm-hmm. It will start the latest in 2020. Well, we haven't seen any of that money. Then we are fighting for loss and damage fund.
Yes.
Last year, Sharm el Sheikh. Mm-hmm. The COP before the one in the UAE, it set up the fund. You had to fight to set up that fund.
Right.
But the fund had no money. A fund without money is an oxymoron.
Right.
Then we go to UAE. There's $700 million pledges, US dollars. No, $700 million. You're not just one disaster in Dominica in 2017 with Maria will take that amount of money.
Yep.
Because in Dominica, it was nearly 200% of the GDP of Dominica. So.
And you showed up for that, and you provided them resources for that.
Yes.
I think the audience needs to understand when we hear these discussions about a loss mitigation fund and these massive amounts of monies, they're not getting to the frontline states that are facing these things.
I was going to say a lot of our audience doesn't even know what those things are, and it would be an part of an international movement to demand funds from the climate change producing countries, the countries that have emitted the most CO2. That and I think what is being said is that what happened right now in St. Vincent is part of a larger thing that's happening all over the Caribbean, where countries are being devastated by hurricanes that are occurring earlier than ever before. And there has to be more than the normal means of like trying to fund or get funding in these resources. There has to be something substantially more, like international movements, so that the developed countries that have contributed greatly to climate change start directly infusing money to pay for the effects of the damage that comes from ever worse hurricanes and devastating the fisheries and other harms that come directly from CO2, highly CO2 producing countries. Am I hearing this correctly?
Yes. We have not seen what has been promised. And you know, my brother and sister, we have fought for loss and damage fund. But that's a loss and damage which you have incurred.
Mm-hmm.
What about mitigation and adaptation monies, which
Yes.
you require before you get the loss and the damage?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the money is not there. Drips and drabs, little pieces, here and there. And we have to continue to advocate, but you make the point correctly that for the countries in the developed world, to move, the populations have to say to the political leaderships, and to the business leaderships, the consumers have to say to the business leaderships, we need to construct a different political economy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to do it in a way where we do not make this Mother Earth inhospitable for future generations. Because what our mantra is 1.5 to stay alive, meaning no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Well, we are on target to go above that by 2030.
Yes.
Mm.
Then we have in real difficulties. Small island developing states, low-lying areas are going to be greatly affected. I haven't spoken about the damage done to the
land itself,
to the land, the degradation of the land, the land erosion. We can come to that shortly. And we are not talking yet about At the same time as you're having intense rainfall, bursts of rainfalls and these storms, we're not talking about the droughts that we have been having and the fall in the average rainfall over the whole year, even though you'll get bursts of heavy rainfall, creating landslides and the like. So it's all part and parcel of the same process of global warming and climate change. And if, in the case of the historic and contemporary emitters from the developed and emerging economies, like for instance, not only North America, and Europe, but also China, where if we don't arrive at net zero by 2050, well, I'm unlikely to be around by 2050, though that I have a full intention. My intention, I don't expect to be realized, that I will make it to 110 like Isaac, son of Abraham. But that's unlikely. But Josie and yourself, you all are much younger. You all may experience a terrible, inhospitable world. And my grandson, my last grandson, Hugo, who will be 1 year on the 24th of this month, when he is my age at the turn of the 22nd century, the place, if we continue like we are going, would not be hospitable for him. That is the reality. But yet, you have people following leaders on this issue who are denying climate change. The science is there. I don't argue that with anybody. The science is there. You can read it, and the science is not just persuasive, it's compelling and conclusive.
Right.
Now, yet you have in the great United States of America a leading figure saying at rallies, I'm going to burn, baby, burn. I'm going to burn the oil. I'm going to burn, let's burn it. Burn, baby, burn.
Right.
No. And in that way, the illusion is engendered that in that way, in some ineffable way, that will somehow help to make America great again. Well, it's leading all of us to damnation and to immiseration and to an inhospitable earth, because we have to alter the political economy. In the United Kingdom, we just had the general elections. Neither of the major parties was interested in spending a lot of time on climate change. The Conservatives, who lost badly, were running away from the issue. And the Labour Party, which has a much better position on climate change by far than the Tories and the Conservatives, they themselves didn't go and push very much for that, because not something which the constituencies would be responding to. So that until the populations begin to demand of their leaders, listen, I want to hear you on this. I'm interested in my children and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Of course, it's good to see that the Greens increased their number of seats from 1 to 4. But you have 630 members in the British Parliament.
It seems like you have started off talking about so much devastation that has gone on in the island, and then when I kept asking like what is needed, like, and I'm thinking of resources, and I'm thinking of like money in different ways, and it seems like what you're telling me is the most important thing that we can do to help with the devastation from hurricanes like this that are happening more frequently and more powerfully is to demand better of our leaders to take climate change far more seriously than we've been taking it, because we in the West don't realize that these are planet altering, species altering issues.
Well,
We in the West don't recognize the extent to which that the actual survival of humanity in the near run and the devastation that is causing all over the Caribbean in this hemisphere in the short run is directly linked to our actions and what we're doing and how we're consuming and the relationship we have to our economy, our political economy itself. Am I hearing you correctly?
yes, and I'm saying that in addition to the issue of climate change, we have to alter the nature of the political economy, and we have to reform significantly the international financial institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank. No, the United States of America is, among other things, that great country predicated on two propositions which increasingly finding themselves in irreconcilable contradictions. The demand of people for more democracy and the embrace by everyone of the founding fathers' appeal to democratic norms. But that quest for the deepening and the widening of democracy comes in conflict with an economic system which entrenches more and more a tiny minority with economic power.
Yes.
Hmm.
That is what we are talking about here. And until these contradictions, which up to now have not been reconciled, and at some point, if they're not reconciled, they will have to be resolved. How they're going to be resolved, I am not sure. That is to say, the method by which they would be resolved. But we are seeing increasingly that the public, they are not satisfied with this.
Mhm.
Yet, at election time, these central issues are often put on the back burner.
Mhm.
And the opportunism of pragmatism takes center stage. And the issues are defined in a different way by the mass media, controlled by the group which already has strong economic power, centralized economic power. I watch it with great fascination. And it's happening
Right now.
Right now.
right now.
Yeah.
I know that I want to respect your time. I know that we have gone slightly over, but uh, Josie, do you have another question to ask? And then
No,
we'll
I
have
just,
one final one.
we will share the fund that St. Vincent's put up to encourage folks to donate to that fund. We'll also share the critical needs or the immediate needs that you identified around tarps and tents and cots, etc. Those are immediate. We will continue to hopefully engage you and others on your team some of the very ideas that you've talked about today. And so I really appreciate you giving us your time. I know this is, I know you're not getting any sleep, so thank you so much.
But I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Well, what I told we had a CARICOM meeting today, Josie.
Uh-huh.
And this is the second specific CARICOM meeting virtually on the leaders on burial. And the chairmanship of CARICOM has now passed from President Ali of Guyana to Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell of Grenada. And he's a young man. He can be my son. In fact, he's younger than my firstborn son. He's in his 40s. And I told him that though he is younger and stronger than I am, that I would advise him every week to have his doctor check him, because this particular problem which each of us is confronted, it's energy sapping mentally and physically, and you have to make sure that you are in reasonable shape. And he asked me what I've done in that regard. I told him, well, this morning I had a doctor, my doctor come by to check me out, to see that, because it's important. I have to be there to work long hours, and to get this thing right. And this part of what I'm doing here, I'm working because you are going to spread the message.
Yes.
Your program is going to go to other people. And then it's going to take off, and that is how you had asked too, my brother, that we seek to build a progressive international movement. And hopefully, in addition to the specifics of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada, this is part and parcel of the articulation of the possibilities of a progressive international movement, despite limitations. And if I may just say, in relation to the British general elections, it was pleasing to note that Jeremy Corbyn won his seat as an independent in Islington North. And of course, I'm very pleased to see the Labour Party in office, and we'll see what Keir Starmer and his foreign minister, who I expect to be David Lammy, of Caribbean parentage, and Rachel Reeves, the first woman to be Chancellor of the Exchequer, to be the finance minister. But once you stay within the vortex of the existing system, you're not going to move. We're going to be going up a down. We're going to be going up a down escalator.
Down escalator, yes. Right. But Prime Minister, we do have the Progressive International, led by Yanis Varoufakis and others, and so there is hope for real social and economic transformation globally. I'm a supporter and believer that Yanis will lead us into some transformative space, because we are facing dire circumstances based on the economic system. So thank you so much. I hope to catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
And thank you. And one last question. We are a political hip hop show, and we always ask our one question, and you take whatever liberty you want to answer this. We ask our audience, who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual, or group? We know that hip hop is international. And do you have a favorite hip hop artist, individual, or group, or who just helps you through the times right now? It could be any music that you are most inspired by.
I listen to hip hop, but I must tell you, though I am not a cultural chauvinist with music, because I love all kinds of music. I'm a man of reggae, soca, and calypso. And if you ask me who is my favorite soca artist, I will tell you Skinny Fabulous.
Okay.
And if you and maybe if you ask me who is my favorite reggae dancehall artists, I'll probably tell you Buju Banton. But I have several favorites. But you I don't know if you wanted me to tell you if it's Chris Brown or Tupac or
Your answers were perfect because there's an international nature of all of it anyway, right? Like hip hop also originated like with Caribbean influences, right? Like so, the history of the Caribbean and the history of hip hop,
yes.
and it is all intertwined.
Right.
So absolutely, it was an excellent answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Take
luck,
care.
PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. An honor, pleasure to have you here.